Hello AstonMTBers, slightly different video for you today. This is a Ask Me Anything. So I have millions of questions all over various platforms about this bike, comments, messages, emails. So then I asked on Instagram for some questions that I would answer directly in a video. So this is that video. I'm going to try to keep it concise, which is my absolute nemesis in life. Being concise, but let's go for it. First question, Max Jameson, who is a really cool guy who's just moved to Whistler. Cool because he's got the same haircut as me in full blonde, and he's a shredder and a nice guy. Met him in Morsey a few times last year. He said, would you find another independent tester to ride your bikes and play devil's advocate? 100%. If anybody wants to line up some testing days with this from any magazine, website, we can arrange it, or any followers. 100%. I love people to ride them. I think that these three bikes that I've built are all like the best, well, they're the best mountain bikes I've ever had. And in my lifetime, I've rode loads of bikes when I was younger, when I was a sponsored racer, when I was working at Pinkbike, when I finished Pinkbike and was working with some various brands doing some behind the scenes testing and prototyping, most of which I can't talk about. But these bikes are the best ones I've ever had. So I'd love someone to come and ride them and just tell me that either that I'm right, which would be nice, or give me some critical negative feedback on what they think and how they could be better. 545 photo, what rear shock is on it? So in the original photos, it was a Novi Parts Novia shock. So Max from Novi Parts is from Toulouse in the south of France. He used to work at Boss Suspension for 15 years, I think. He's got his own tuning brand, Novi Parts. And recently he created his own single tube shock. I'm pretty sure it's completely made in France. They're all hand built, tuned, made to order. That shock is amazing. I gave one away last month in a competition. They're only 650 euros. So basically cheaper than any production shock. And like always, I say the most important thing about suspension isn't what shock it is, or pretty colours, or special tech. The most important thing is getting a good tune that suits your bike and suits your riding style. So that Novi Parts shock was built for the titanium bike, which has got a -6% regressive leverage ratio at the moment. And that shock actually has a progressive damping curve, which isn't ideal for a progressive linkage, because, short story, it's too soft at the start, it's too soft at lower speeds, and then too harsh at higher speeds. But that shock has a progressive damping ratio to suit the regressive or extremely linear titanium bike. It did also work really well on this, but it was just a bit too harsh on high speed stuff. So I put the Cane Creek Kitsuma on. One, because I like to try different things. And two, because, well, the Kitsuma's ultimate shock. This is why I give away a Rulesman package every month on my website. You can go and win one now and support. The Kitsuma's the best shock because it's got the widest range of damping on the market. So you can essentially dial it in to suit any bike, and it's got a slightly digressive damping curve, which works better on the progressive bike. It's also my go-to shock because Rulesman is an absolute freak, genius, possibly psycho, expert on these shocks and exactly how they work. So I can put this shock on any bike and drop him a message, give him the leverage ratio and the kinematic numbers, and in 10 minutes normally I get a response with the go-to settings that he knows I'll like, and they're always spot on, and it just makes life a lot easier to get the bike set up and test. That's not something special to me. If you're a Rulesman customer, you get that anyway, included in the service. If you win the Rulesman competition I have on this month and you get a Cane Creek Kitsuma shock, you get the after sale service from him pretty much always within a few clicks of perfection. Sometimes I have to change it slightly, but that's simply rider preference or using it to adjust the balance of the bike in different ways. For example, if the bike's pitched too far forwards and you can't get the bar height higher, you don't want to increase the fork pressure and reduce the fork sag and reduce your grip. You could lower the compression on the rear a couple of clicks just to sit the bike back into the travel. Or if you're changing between flatter and steeper trails, a few clicks here and there can help balance it. So yeah, no V parts originally and now Cane Creek Kitsuma. Concise, again, not my forte. Super Sam Lad won the Orange 329 last year, which I wish I'd have kept, but I had to give it away for financial reasons of going bankrupt. But yeah, the PT Replica 329 would be amazing to have next to this Nicholas Villos replica from a fairly similar point in mountain bike history. But anyway, he asked, having ridden it a while, would you improve it? Not really. It's unbelievable. For pure downhill riding, completely happy with it. A couple of things I would like to change, but they'll take away from the replica effect. I'd like a 56mm straight head tube, a bigger head tube, just to give more adjustment with angle set cups or reach adjust cups, just to play around. I would like to have a gearbox on it, but it's a replica, and I also wanted to keep testing these TRP gears that have been pretty good so far. And part of me wishes, this is a replica of my 99 bike, but I'm not sure, a couple of years later, I had a bolt-on seat mast, and I wish I would have gone for a bolt-on seat mast because it would have looked a lot cleaner. Because this isn't the prettiest, but it is a replica. And it would have been nice to have like a downhill seat tube that you could then remove and bolt on an enduro position seat tube. But I should be able to get a dropper seat post in this anyway. But nothing else would improve. Geometry, really happy with it. The build kit, extremely happy with it. There's a few bits that I didn't really choose because I was limited with budget, like the cranks, for example. It would be nice to have a set of old school XCR cranks, but I also don't think you can get them in this size. And maybe some different wheels. These are just wheels from my other bike, but I would like to get some different or posh wheels for it. Different saddle, maybe a nicer seat post, but nothing that actually affects performance I would change at the moment. The one thing that I would like to improve is the chain slap. For some reason I've got loads of chain slap. I don't really know why, it's so bad. But one of the worst bikes I've had for years. So it's so bad that it's all chipped on top of here, on top of the seat stay or the swing arm. So the chain's been going around there and chipping that off. So to improve that, I'm going to put an O chain on it when I get home. I'm on the road at the moment, but I do have an O chain at home that'll fit, which the O chain's really good for absorbing chain slap. It just sort of acts like a damper. You can win one on my site actually this month. O chain, one of the most popular competitions and highly recommended product for essentially any bike. And I also want to try and see if you can get the STFU, which is the Chris Kavaric designed shut the F up bike chain damper. I've got some at home and hopefully I can fit one on here somewhere and have it in the correct range on the cassette to keep this chain slap under control, because that's not very nice at all. Oh my god, it's like Mosquito World Champs over here. Next week is Mosquito World Champs in Fort William. Midge World Champs. Liam King 0510 have you noticed the change in sprung to unsprung weight when coming from a gearbox? Yeah, absolutely massive. The suspension action on this is really good, but it is really noticeable from the titanium bike, which has got no derailleur, no chain guide on the rear, and just one cog instead of this big heavy. This is a cheap GX 7-speed, which is relatively heavy. And then that titanium bike's got a much lighter swing arm as well due to the design, and we went quite light on that. And then yeah, the pinion, which is heavier because it's got oil and it's constantly lubricated and your gears are constantly protected, and you can change when you're not moving. You never have to clean it and you never have to tune the gears, so it's heavier, a little bit heavier, and that's stuck in the middle, and that really, yeah, massive difference. Gearboxes have to be the way forward. I know the pinion isn't perfect, but the new pinion smart shift should be much better. Really interested to try that out in the future. Bespoke Wheels UK, why does it have to look like a farm gate that's being crashed into? Smiley squinty eye face emoji. Because it's a replica of the original bike, which when Max Commensal, I think, designed it to look like a crashed up farm gate. His design was based around like a single one-person gate, whereas my design is based around like a double width, like double track gate that you can get a Land Rover through. Fabian Furious, more reviews than advertising for buying tickets! Exclamation. I think what he means is he wants to see more reviews, please, instead of me promoting buying tickets. Well, I am facing a bit of a conundrum at the moment as the competition side of the website, which funds everything. Testing mountain bikes is really expensive. This is like a 70 or 80 euro tyre. I did like 6 days on it. It's destroyed. Brake pads, suspension services, all the parts, lift tickets. Mega expensive job. The glory days when I worked at Pinkbike, you literally message any brand and the stuff, anything you want, turns up in a week with loads of extra stuff to keep you sweet. Like, oh, can I have a set of brakes please from S company? You get a whole drivetrain and you get a whole set of suspension, you get everything. Turn up to try and keep you a happy boy when you're talking about their products. Buying all the stuff yourself is really difficult. So I would love to just be able to only do reviews and content, but yeah, the competition side, which funds it, has taken over. If there's anyone out there who wants a job that can manage the company, knows how to do e-commerce, ideally lives in the UK, can look after logistics and help improve the site, push it forward, help with bike builds, accounts, and all these different things, that would be great. I'm in a position to employ someone to do that. So get in touch if you could manage this business, manage me. Good luck managing me and my ADHD brain. Spuds Customs, who did the linkage design work and how similar is it to the original? In terms of the essential linkage, it's the same. Single pivot, pull link, which pulls and rotates the rocker, which drives the shock. Ancelotti style, that's the same essentially. The main difference is this has an idler wheel, the original didn't. The pivot point's actually relatively similar to the original, but the original had a 77 tooth chainring, which actually raised the chain line up to actually a fairly similar position. But I didn't base the kinematics of this bike on any way on the original. I wanted the kinematics that I think would work well, not something that worked well years ago when bikes were completely different tracks, completely different everything, geometry, sizing, wheel size, everything. So the kinematics are close to what I could get with the Replica feeling. Luca Zen, what about leverage curves, AS, AD and some other nerdy stuff, if you're not too jealous, that is. I think by jealous he means that's what translates from European languages into English. Jealous means secretive. But no, I'm not, so let's have a look. So the compression ratio starts at 2.88 down to 2.58 at 198 mil of travel. At 66 mil, which is the sag point approximately, from there on it's essentially completely linear, which is what I like. And the overall progressivity is 10.9%, but most of that progressivity comes before the sag point. And then the compression ratio essentially straight, and the forces, yeah, essentially straight really. Anti-squat is higher than I wanted, although it does pedal better than the other bikes, but due to packaging reasons the idler wheel couldn't go straight onto the main pivot, which is what I prefer on the other bikes. On the other bikes we had an adjustable idler mount and we tried all different ones, and I found that for overall riding, and Nico from Eggery also agrees with me, that the best is to have it straight on the pivot, even though on paper the anti-squat isn't as good as it could be, but it does cause you other problems, which I'll have to go into in more depth in the future. But basically it pedals absolutely fine with the idler straight on the pivot. But the anti-squat only really matters at the sag point, and the sag at the sag point is 135% at 60 mil sag. If you've got a good shock setup and good anti-squat as it is here, the anti-squat doesn't matter in the rest of the chart, because if it stays stable when you pedal, that's all it matters. This is super stable in the pedaling. Anti-rise in a similar way doesn't matter across the whole chart. It's most important before the sag point, so it starts off at 144%, and at sag, let's say it's 131, down to 100 at full travel. I like more anti-rise like this. I don't like bikes with less than 100 anti-rise, because when you're travelling down a hill at speed and you're tall especially, and you pull the brakes, you get too much pitch forward, and when you're hitting bumps and on the brakes, it like lifts the bike up. Perfect world, 100% on paper, but also on paper on these graphs are also open to interpretation, depends where you put the centre of gravity and some other things. Depends on the bike setup, depends on the angle of the terrain you go in, depends how hard you pull the brake, depends if you brake with just a rear brake or just a front brake, depends if you lean back or not when you brake, lots of different things. So in theory, people are going to say this stiffens up under braking. It does a little bit, but there's ways to work around it, and overall I prefer higher anti-rise. This is ideal really, 100, 130. After about, I don't know, 60% of travel, it doesn't matter at all, because you can't really be using the brakes and be more than 60-70% of the travel if your suspension's set up properly. So ways to ride around it: 1, get out the braking bumps, brake for as short as possible, brake with the front brake first. If you apply the front brake slightly before the rear brake, you'll set the bike into the travel on the fork, and then there's less effect of the anti-rise on the rear, because you're starting to brake on the front, you're slowing down more with the front brake and using the rear brake less, and the less you pull in the rear brake, the less effect it is having on the suspension action. If you're only using the rear brake loads as much as you can, or skidding, that has like a massive effect on it. If you've got a really slack head angle and a nice high bar, really linear fork with ample compression damping, you can brake loads on the front wheel, and most of your slowing down comes from the front brake. Yeah, and as I said, then you're braking less on the rear and it doesn't matter as much. You can also use this amount of anti-rise to your benefit on some parts on the trail. For example, you're going straight and you want to set up high for a corner, last minute you don't have much time to do it, you can jab the back brake and it'll sit it down slightly and then turn, and it will make it easier to get up and get your high line into the corner. And setup and corner speed is everything really. Big jumps and all those things don't really affect your speed in like racing situations or any situation. Corner setup, corner speed, corner exit speed is all that matters. That's the anti-rise. And obviously again, it's all a compromise. All these things affect each other. So I think this kind of setup and the other bikes are the best overall compromise. If you can isolate everything, you could do different things, which is what a lot of brands try to do, but then I think they generally make it too complicated. You end up giving yourself other problems like having 26 bearings. I think the Specialized Enduro has 26 bearings to change. My steel bike has 2 bearings to change. So it's always got less friction, less maintenance and better suspension action most of the time. Wheels and sticks, comparison to the original is needed. I'm trying to get the original rebuilt. Someone's hopefully going to be rebuilding the fork and someone's going to be rebuilding the brakes separately. So hopefully sometime in September it'll be ready, and I'm hopefully going to race at the Vintage Mountain Bike World Championships in Davos, Klosters. But we'll see. That's a very optimistic, extremely optimistic. Shred the Track 85. Is the super long CS tricky in tight corners? Absolutely not. I've never been around corners so well in my whole life. I'd love someone else to try it and see, because it corners unbelievably well. First of all, I don't think the chainstay is extremely long. It's in balance with the size of this modern bike for a tall 6 foot 186 centimetre tall rider. 2 things about tight corners. 1, extremely tight corners like Euro enduro turns, you need to endo anyway, and your number 1 friend with an enduro turn is what I mentioned before, being able to brake a lot on the front wheel, having the wheel out in front of you, high front end, linear spring rate and loads of damping support. Then it's much easier to load the front wheel and flick the back of the bike around. Obviously that's a lot based on skill as well. Second type of corners are very tight corners that you're turning around. So if it's too tight to turn around, you've got to endo. If it's very tight still but you can turn around it, you want to load the front wheel around the corner, and the long chainstay for me actually makes it easier to do those tight corners. You've got more weight on the front, less weight on the rear, so the rear is lighter to brake traction, and if it's loose or bumpy it'll brake traction, or you can then dab the rear brake to get it to kick out and sort of oversteer around the corner. And then on all the other corners it's just amazing. It feels like, I don't know what it feels like, railing berms on it. It just doesn't sink into the travel like a lot of other bikes. Really stable. I rode my brother's old Transition TR11 in the bike park the other week and got him to ride this, and it was horrible. Like, you lean into the corners, really unstable on high speed berms. Ugh, horrible. So yeah, super long chainstay for me, absolutely not tricky, completely the opposite. Really easy to ride. The high BB helps it to tip into corners really easy. It's incredibly agile, I think. And related to the agileness is the suspension support. So it's very linear, front and rear, the same on the other bikes. That gives you loads of support to push against and to manoeuvre the bike. On a more progressive bike, you try and push into it, or a bike with less damping support, you try and push into it and it wallows around and makes it slow. Interestingly, I've been running positive PB drop. I'm trying to run it on as many bikes as I can since 6 years ago. First did it with a Nikolai e-bike that you could jack it up using the mutators. And now the pole e-bike, which they claim to be extremely agile, which I assume it is, even though I haven't rode it. That new pole e-bike and the pole trail bikes have 0mm BB drop to improve agility, which is something I've been trying to say for years. And also the new common sail bike essentially has 0mm B drop. It's +3 or -3, so essentially 0. Marcus Nez 4, did you ever think to endurify the bike when building it, dropper and large cassette? Well, hopefully I can fit a dropper into this. I need to measure it up and get a shorter dropper, because the 210 that I have at the moment is going to be way too deep in here. But I'm going to try and get like a 150 or something and do some calculations, see if it'll fit. I've also got a new anomaly switch grade, which adds a bit of rise to the dropper, so I should be able to get a dropper in it. I've also got a new hub at home. I need to build a new wheel, which can take, the hub can take a 11 speed or 12 speed cassette. I think I can fit an 11 speed Shimano drivetrain in there without getting too much of the chain hitting the chainstay. I would like to do that. That needs some calculating and testing, troubleshooting. At the moment it's a pure downhill bike, it's summer, so that's how it is. Lawn Dart, Kinematics, been through those. Porter Neff, does the shock and pivot point differ from the Titronatron and does it ride better? The pivot point's the same. The idler wheel is lower by, I'm not sure, 40mm, but the pivot point's in the same place. I haven't rode the Titronatron since I rode this because I had to go back to be rewelded. I tried to rebuild it yesterday, but the Formula fork, downhill fork that I wanted to put on it, comes with a 160mm brake mount, which I think is mental. I did have someone from Formula contact me saying that I should check and just put the right mount on it, but I think it should have a 200mm mount. But I haven't rode it because I don't have the right parts with me while I'm on the road in the van, because I'm not carrying around +40 or +60mm post mounts. Who has a +60mm mount? That's ridiculous. It's a downhill fork, put a downhill mount on it. Sorry, end of story. But I currently preferred the ride of the titanium bike when I first went on this, but that's for multiple reasons. One, that bike's more flexy. Two, that bike's got better sprung mass. Three, it's got a more linear leverage ratio. So initially when I went into this, I did prefer this, but obviously you need to go back to back. After about 3 days of riding this, I was like, I've tuned it up a bit now, got the balance sorted, played around with it, and I think it's better. Toby Bromwich, how does the twin top tubes affect chassis stiffness? Well, it's hard to say precisely because I haven't rode the same setup with a single top tube, but I think the twin tube design is a very effective design. I don't know why it fell out of favour. Maybe because it's too heavy, or maybe it's because it's ugly, or maybe because it's more difficult to manufacture. Like, this is an absolute nightmare for Nico to build. Poor guy. Building one of these from scratch must have been, well, he said it was horrible and he doesn't want to make another one. It does add a lot of stiffness to the frame, especially in the BB pivot area. This pivot's clamped between these two pieces and then going down to the BB. That whole middle of the bike's really stiff. I think there's a good reason for two top tubes. I think it's mainly fashion, why they don't exist anymore. It's more like a motocross style. I think the Honda, just off the top of my head, was more this kind of frame structure, and also the old Ancelottis. And I remember speaking to Tommaso, the main reason he went from the twin tube to the single tube was to make it easier to manufacture and to speed up manufacturing times. I didn't hear him say it was for any particular performance reason on the trail, but from a business point of view, speeds up manufacturing times and, yeah, possibly looks nicer. And also, this is heavier. This is a 5 kilo frame, so yeah, more tubes, more weight. Davides, why not an enduro bike anymore? Mainly because it's a replica of one of the most, if not the most iconic downhill bike ever made. In my opinion, the most iconic downhill bike ever made. Tom MTBG, better than the Titron. Been through that, not sure. Rich Pitcock, Do you have a more in-depth review of the pedals? I don't have a more in-depth review, but I think these are the best pedals on the market. I think I'll review them at the Pinkbike. They're better because if you've got big feet, I don't have particularly big feet, 9.5 US, extremely average size everywhere, I'm told. If you've got a short platform and you've got your leg and your foot sat on the platform, all your weight's going through your heel, you need a really good sticky rubber shoe, grippy shoe, and a really grippy pedal to fight this movement. This pedal is longer, so your foot's more connected to the pedal and you get less of this movement, less heel movement. If I go back to a normal pedal now, I just feel like I can't balance. I'm like wobbling all over the place trying to balance these guys. I would love to just have some pedals made just to try out that are the same size as your feet, just to see what that's like. Obviously ugly and heavy, but Fabio Tizotto suspension, leverage ratio, how much and why, linear, progressive or what, differences with a monocross, mono pivot. So I've been through most of that. The main reason I prefer linear is you get more mid-stroke support, and I don't believe you need progression to tackle bottom out resistance if you have ample amount of damping, high speed damping, with ample amount of oil pushing through shims. Most shocks don't generate or can't generate enough high speed compression damping force. I don't know why, because they're too small and too light and there's not enough oil in them. If you have much bigger shocks, you could have much more range of damping, and then I just don't think you need progressive. When I had the Supreme custom commensal last year, we tested a shock set with identical settings from the computer and the dyno. Different settings, but set to give the same feeling on the trail, with a 20% progressive linkage and a 45% progressive, the original commensal linkage. Don't quote me on numbers, this is off the top of my head. So basically much more linear, much more progressive. The shock equalised to give you the same feeling. We did a 2 metre drop to flat, like 10 times. The linear bike used less travel and put 1.5 Gs of force through the main frame into the rider. The same drop, this is an average, the same drop with a more progressive ratio, used more travel and put through 5 Gs of force into the rider, and it was massively noticeable. And the easy explanation is a linear bike absorbs more force through the entire range of travel, so you get a big landing and all the way through the compression it's absorbing more force and reducing the amount of force that you're going to get at the end stroke, whereas a progressive bike reduces the force less at the start and then tries to slow it all down at the end. Then you're trying to slow down a massive force at the end, and then that force has to go into the chassis. Very complicated to explain off the top of my head, but essentially now I'm completely convinced by linear. When I go back to a progressive bike, it just feels like it wallows too much and doesn't support me in the corners, and is much less predictable to ride as well. And it's much less predictable to ride because you don't get a massive multiplication of the damping forces created by the linkage as it goes through the travel on compression and rebound. The more linear bikes are way more easy to predict what's going to happen and to feel what's going to happen, which makes your life extremely easy when you're riding on the trail. Well, I've gone into waffle mode now. Right, try and pull it back together. V-Morand, how did you get another set of Catalyst Evo? Because I found them in a box in the back of my garage. They happened to be red and matched the spring, which was lucky. When I moved house to the farm a few years ago, everything was a chaos. And yeah, they got lost in a box somewhere. Roro94 Easy, will we see your bike check on famous MTB websites? Well, today I've just done a bike of the day upload to Vital, so hopefully that'll make it onto the front page. Any other mountain bike website is welcome to feature this bike on their website, or any of my other bikes, absolutely no problem. I stopped contacting any of the websites with any news because I was really annoyed when I did the Commensal safety recall video last year, questioning whether it should be a recall, because I'd had over 100 people message me. Now I'm up to about 150, maybe more. I sent that out as a public service announcement, not to upset Commensal or anything, just to protect rider safety. I didn't get a response from any of the main mountain bike websites, which is quite annoying, because that just makes me think they care more about advertising dollars than rider safety. I care more about rider safety and the riders than the money. I don't care about the money. I just want to earn enough money to ride bikes and have a simple life on a cheap farm in Italy. Some of these big corporation-owned media are desperate to make money for shareholders and don't want to upset their advertisers. Possibly. Just a thought. Mario2604, does the frame have a special cathodic coating or other methods protecting it inside from corrosion? I'm 99% sure it doesn't, but I'm sure Eggery can fill in on the comments if it does. I'm pretty sure it's just painted, and the idea is to keep it dry and spray some wax or oil inside periodically to keep it rust free. There are quite a few holes on the frame to let water release, and there's definitely one under the BB, so any water should come out. And I generally don't ride that much in the wet because I live in Italy, or spend majority of my time in Italy. Barbar 1.2, how do you find the Continental tyres? Really good in every way. These are Michelin's, by the way, but really good in every way, except I just think they're too square. Even on a 25mm rim, they're too square. Same with these tyres, too square. I think all the tyres are too square nowadays, apart from Michelin, Maxxis DHF and Assegai, or DHR, DHF, Assegai. Don't like square tyres on dry conditions. Danny the mechanic, is the suspension layout to the layout different to the original, and how? Again, explained before, pretty much the same. Rulesman, do you still work on Tinder? No, completed it. Too easy. Need a challenge in my life. Bobby, does the complex linkage offer better performance than the single pivots? So far, I don't think it does. I think a single pivot with a well set up shock and good geometry, absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think the main reason brands are looking for complex multi-pivot bikes is it gives them something to sell, gives them something to patent, gives the marketing team something to talk about. Good single pivot can be absolutely amazing. And with the modern technology we've got, there's ways that you can improve a single pivot. O-chain, high pivot, idler, rotating bushings to remove shock side loading, that kind of thing. Gary MC, is this the bike, the one, the only, the never go back, nothing will surpass it bike? If so, why? Well, it's not, because you can always improve stuff. I would never ever say that anything's perfect and can't be improved. At the moment, it's absolutely unreal, but build bike better is my hashtag. You can always make stuff better. You can make it lighter, you could improve the bearing sealing, you could improve the components, could improve the geometry slightly, you can make it into a more all-round bike with a dropper, bigger gears, could have a gearbox. You can always improve it, but at the moment, incredibly happy with it. Obviously it holds some part in my heart that it's a cool replica bike, so it's not the ultimate bike. I would never say that any of my bikes are the ultimate bike, they can always be better, but it is unbelievably good right at the moment. That's it, end of story. If you like this, drop a comment, go and buy some competition tickets. You can win an O-chain this month, you can win Rulesman suspension, 3,500 of Rulesman suspension. You can have a fork and a shock, an Intend or Dorado fork, and a Cane Creek shock, any length, any size, built to order, tuned, after sale service, warranty, all included. You can also win a Bell Full 10 helmet, which is my go-to helmet at the moment. Carbon, any size, shipped anywhere in the world. You can win an O-chain, as I talked about in this video, to fit any bike, any size, any option. A full Hope bike build package, so all the parts you can buy from Hope to build a bike: wheels, brakes, cranks, BB, headset, etc. You win some of my gloves, AstonMTB gloves. I can't remember what the other competitions are off the top of my head, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and yeah, let me know if you liked it. See you soon.